I'm Gabe Lullo, and welcome to the Do Hard Things podcast. We're talking to go-to-market leaders and entrepreneurs who have conquered the challenges, the hustle, and the grind. Get ready for real talk, real insights, and no fluff.
But the hardest thing in the world right now is not actually closing deals, it's actually getting somebody's attention.
If you don't have that hook in that first 5 to 10 seconds, guess what? They're going to scroll to the next one.
You need to go in and you need to make it sound like yourself. That's the biggest piece of the puzzle. And I promise you, we can all tell.
The people that are trolls and the people that are haters never done the thing that you're doing.
I love doing this podcast because I get a front row seat to some of the greatest minds in sales.
Gone are the days of saying stay in your lane. When you're an executive leader and you're an enterprise-wide leader, there are no lanes. You've got to be partners.
Curiosity is like when the type of questions you ask is sometimes the value that you bring.
I need you to tell me when you're ready to buy or what you're ready to do. And I think it's changed so much into like adding more value. And if you're not doing that, then you're definitely going to come off as desperate.
High pressure selling is like a dinosaur tactic at this point.
No parent is like, oh, you should be a salesperson when you grow up, right? Everyone's like a doctor, lawyer, whatever crap. It's never salespeople.
It's not your job to motivate people. It's your job to find motivated people.
It's not cockiness. It's not arrogance. It's confidence knowing I know this and I know that I can help you.
From where I started to where I am today is all because I learned how to sell.
And there's too many people who have only been doing this for 5 freaking minutes. Sit down, close your mouth, actually go out there and get yourself beat up. Then come back and tell me if something is dead or not.
That is exactly why I started this podcast, because right there, that's the epitome of doing hard things.
Welcome back to the Do Hard Things podcast with Lexi and Gabe. Today's guest, Jason Feifer, is the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, a best-selling author and one of today's leading voices on adaptability and navigating change. For nearly a decade, Jason has studied the world's most successful entrepreneurs, uncovering how they respond to disruption, seize opportunities, and turn uncertainty into growth. He's delivered keynotes for global giants like Google, Microsoft, and Pfizer, helping leaders and teams transform adaptability into a true competitive advantage. Jason is also the author of Build for Tomorrow, host of the hit podcast Help Wanted, which reaches over 1 million downloads a month, and writer for the newsletter One Thing Better, read by more than 75,000 high performers each week. Beyond his editorial and speaking work, Jason co-founded CPG Fast Track, an accelerator helping early-stage founders scale smarter and advises numerous startups and business communities. Jason, welcome to the show.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Do Hard Things podcast with your hosts, Gabe and Lexi. And we are absolutely ecstatic that Jason is on the show. We're here, man. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, we got to hear your origin story because it's quite incredible. We just heard your bio, and you've interviewed so many leaders, so many entrepreneurs, from Gary Vee to The Rock to Robert Herjavec, my favorite shark. So walk me through that. How did you, work with trusted leaders and training so many entrepreneurs? How did you get into this role? And I know it didn't happen overnight. Just take us through that origin story.
Oh, yeah. It didn't happen overnight at all. It didn't happen as something that I was even going for. Which I think is really the best outcome. We can never, ever predict where we're going to be going. And so the greatest thing that we can be doing is leaving open the possibility of what comes next. Malcolm Gladwell told me self-conceptions are powerfully limiting. And I absolutely love that line because it is so true. If you have too narrow of a concept of who you are and what you do, then you'll turn down all the other opportunities along the way. So in this case, I graduated college. I became a community newspaper reporter. And the most important lesson in my entire career came from that experience. I was working at a tiny little newspaper, 6,000 circulation daily newspaper in North Central Massachusetts, covering nothing. I'm covering middle school plays. Like there's just nothing going on. And I got bitter because I kept waiting for someone to recognize my genius and be like, you kid at this tiny paper, you're going to the New York Times or you're covering Washington or whatever, right? And that's not going to happen. That never happens. Nobody ever goes to you. You have to go to them. And so I quit that job after a year and I sat in my bedroom and I let's be clear, a dumpy apartment, $500 a month next to a graveyard in rural Massachusetts. And I started cold pitching editors, just ideas that I had for stories for big publications. And eventually they started to respond to me and started to let me write for these really big publications that were never going to call me up and hire me, but that were interested in me if I was sending them ideas. And anyway, like, the reason I'm telling you this story is because of this. That set me on my path because I proved myself. I started to make great connections. I started to move up into the media world, and getting into entrepreneur and kind of becoming a real entrepreneur who understands entrepreneurs is a different thing. But in this first phase, the most important thing that I realized was that in front of you, Gabe, you, Lexi, you, whoever's listening, me, in front of all of us at any one time, there are two sets of opportunities: opportunity set A, opportunity set B. Opportunity set A is everything that's available to you. I mean, sorry, opportunity set A is everything that's asked of you. So that means if you have a job and your boss is asking you to do things, you got to do them well. That's opportunity set A. Do a good job. You have a company, your customers expect things. Do a good job. That's opportunity set A. Opportunity set B is everything that's available to you that nobody is asking you to do. And that could be, you guys like podcasts, you decide to start a podcast. It's just available to you. Nobody asked you to do it. You're just doing it. I am here to tell you that opportunity set B is always more important, infinitely more important. If you only focus on the things that are asked of you, you will only be qualified to do the things you're already doing. Opportunity set B is where growth happens, where you say, what can I do that nobody's asking me to do, but that is available to me? In my case back then, it was quit my job and pitch editors. That was available to me. Nobody was stopping me from doing that. I could send an email to anybody at any time. Most people did not. Most people stayed at the job and they just did the things that were asked of them. And all that got them was more of that job. That is what I have repeated throughout my entire career. That is what I continue to do today. That is the reason why I'm the editor in chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, but also speaking on stages and writing books and making podcasts and advising startups and building companies. Like, nobody's asking me to do any of that, but I'm doing it because that's where growth comes from.
I love that. And you've also built a career helping people and companies navigate change. When did you realize adaptability was more than just a buzzword, but something that you could really master and teach others?
So there's a funny thing that happens if you listen to the questions that people ask you. I challenge you all to do this. If you listen to the questions that people ask you and kind of track it across time, what are the themes of the questions that people are asking me? What you will discover is that when people ask you questions, what they're really doing is they are telling you what they think your value is to them. And so when I became editor in chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, which frankly, I didn't know that much about business. This was 10 years ago. I didn't know that much about business. I was a media guy. I had worked at Men's Health and this sleazy men's magazine, Maxim. And like, I didn't know that much about business. I started listening to the questions that people were asking me. And the thing that they kept asking me was this: what are the qualities of successful people? They're like, you talk to all these people. What is the commonality that makes them most successful? And I thought, why is everyone asking me that question? Like, in the very early days, you guys, you're asking the first two questions that you've asked me are rooted in some knowledge of me, right? But back then, nobody knew who I was. So it was like, well, he's the editor in chief, so this is the question I'm asking. Why? Why are they asking that question? The answer was because what they perceive me to be is a pattern matcher. I'm a guy who has access to lots of people. Therefore, I can see the patterns in success and I can repeat that back to them. I didn't have an answer to that, Lexi. I didn't know the answer. And so I just started to think about it. What is the answer? What is the thing that actually does draw a through line between all successful people? And the answer that I came to after thinking about it a while, talking to others, was adaptability. They're all adaptable. They're all getting into business with one idea and then throwing it out the window as soon as it doesn't work and figuring something else out. And then it just became a question of like, well, how are they doing that? Are they born with that? Is that something they have to learn? And I learn from asking people questions. So that's just what I did. I just started to zero in. This is the thing that I wanted to understand from people. And the more in which I asked them, the more in which I gained this insight, which is that it is not something you're born with. It is a skill that you can learn. And that I think one of the greatest things in the entrepreneurial journey is discovering that being bad at something or failing at something is not actually that big of a deal. Ryan Reynolds told me to be good at something, you have to be willing to be bad. And that is right.
Absolutely. So thousands of people have come to us to start their sales career with our company,
Mhm.
right? And they're, of course, learning on how to pitch and learning on how to share a message in a very short period of time. And I'm working with entrepreneurs all the time, like you, and I ask them, "Hey, what do you do for your company?" And then 15 minutes later, they're still talking.
Yeah.
You have this. You spoke with Robert Hirschbeck, and I love that episode that you guys did on Help Wanted podcast. It was you don't want to go ahead and share too much information, and you had this one rep that was, "Hey, I'm brand new," right? So walk us through this mission statement you have, this 7-word mission statement. I'm not going to give it away. I'm letting you going to do it, where you could just very quickly, without confusing people, who you are, what you do. This is my business, and how do you frame that with entrepreneurs and sellers?
Okay. Uh, you actually wove together a couple different things. So I'm going to unpack them all because they're all fun. So the first is, let's talk about the Robert Herjavec thing. So the Robert Herjavec thing that you're referring to is a sales strategy that he taught. Actually, originally he taught it on this on a stage where I was interviewing him, and then we talked about it afterwards. It's great. Okay, so here's what Robert says. Robert's like, look, when you go to pitch, you're all excited, you're ready to share that information, and the person that you're pitching is thinking, "Oh my god, when is this gonna be over? I can't stand this." And that is the narrative that they have in their head. This is gonna be boring. They're gonna pitch me something. I'm gonna have to act like I'm kind of interested, but not committal because I'm not sure that I'm interested, and then I gotta get through it, and I hate being pitched. That's the narrative. Every time that you go into any situation, the person who you are interacting with has some kind of narrative in their head about how this is going to go. Your job is to, and this is Robert's language, shock the narrative. You need to undercut it immediately so that people think, wait a second, I don't exactly know what's going to happen here, but also I'm interested in this person, because that's when they're going to listen closely to you. Now, the story that he gave me to illustrate that, as you had alluded to, was that so Robert Herjavec, everyone knows him from Shark Tank, but what they may not know is that he's built this massive cybersecurity company. That's where his money comes from. And so he had this young sales guy who had been hired and was not sharp guy, knew it all, wasn't closing any deals. And the sales manager was like, "This kid's a loser. Let's get rid of him." And Robert said, "Let me tag along and see what's going on first." And so Robert goes to a sales call, and what he sees is this kid showing up, delivering the information, very competent, not making any connection to people. Just, he's not doing it. He's just delivering the information. And so Robert afterwards says to the kid, he says, "Look, I want you to try something. The next sales call, you're going to walk in there, and before you get going, you're going to take a beat, and then you're going to look at them and you're going to say, 'Look, before I get going, I just want to tell you that I'm so appreciative of you taking your time today to meet with me. I'm really nervous. This is my first sales call." And why? Why do this? Now, it's sort of a lie because it's not his first sales call, but he is new and he clearly is nervous. And the reason for this was because Robert realized, who are they pitching? They're pitching middle-aged men in IT. And those middle-aged men are going to look at this young kid walking in there and they're going to think, "That's my son and I want to help him." And so this kid starts doing that. The middle-aged IT guys start paying attention. They're much more sympathetic. Now they're actually willing to hear the pitch and to consider the salesperson, and the kid starts closing deals. So much so that like a year or two later, Robert goes on another sales call with him and sees that he's still opening with that same line. And he's like, "You got to stop that. You got to stop that now." But it worked, right? Shock the narrative. That is so powerful. Now, that's that story. What you would also ask was about this 7-word thing. So this is slightly different. This is really less about communicating. Let me. I can answer that, and I will. But while I'm monologuing here, I'm actually going to attach something a little bit different to it, which is the thing that I have found. So I love shock the narrative, and here is the thing that I have found to be the most powerful way to communicate to somebody and drive a sale, and that is to follow this specific framework. So before you go into any sales meeting, you need to be able to fill out, from your consumer's point of view, the following Mad Libs. The Mad Libs is this: when context, I want solution so that benefit. When context, I want solution so that benefit. When there's something wrong, I want something to solve that problem so that I can get what I actually want. So if, the three of us were we were building a company that makes Zit cream for teenagers, then the way in which we might articulate that from a consumer's point of view is, when I have a big pimple on my forehead, I want to get rid of that pimple as fast as possible so that I can get to school more confidently. Now, the reason to do this is because, although we all understand this, most people in business and in sales stop at solution. We're so focused on the solution. We're building the solution. We're selling the solution. We want to talk about the solution. Nobody cares about the solution. They don't care. They're not interested in your solution at all. They're interested in the benefit. They're interested in the thing that your solution enables in the language that they already use to describe what they want. And so when you walk in and you pitch a solution, you do not have people. When you walk in and you understand the benefit and what they're looking for in the way in which they want it, you do have them. That's the shift.
I love that. And going off of communication, I know you've talked about before how it seems like a lot of people don't respond anymore. And something that you really care about is responding to everything, even if it takes a little bit.
Yeah.
Why do you think so many people go wrong there and don't respond?
I don't know. I mean, I can talk about the benefits of responding all day, but like, why do you guys think? Like, why do people not respond? What is the reason?
I don't
I
even.
don't know. I think the value isn't there. I think maybe they don't know what it is. I think they're confused, or maybe they just don't care to want to know the solution.
Maybe okay. Like, the context for this for me is, if somebody sends me an email, I respond. I do. I mean, if it's like, I don't respond to every sales email because I know that those are just getting mass blasted or whatever. But if somebody really took the time to write me personally, I respond. Doesn't mean it's going to be a long response. Doesn't mean I'm going to say yes, but I do respond. And I have found that to be such an absolutely incredible builder of trust and of relationships. I mean, just before this recording, I got an email from there's a woman who had she was like she was like I recorded an audiobook a number of years ago, and I didn't realize this, but audiobooks, they have like listeners who will kind of listen to the whole thing and look for moments in which the audio is a little off or something needs to be fixed. And she wrote me years ago because she did that and she just really liked my book. I have written people whose books I liked, and I never heard back from them. And I think that that's so obnoxious. I genuinely don't care how many emails you get. It can't be that hard. It just can't be. So, I wrote her back. Not only did I write her back and thanked her because she said the book was so great, and then I mailed her a physical copy of the book because she had taken time to be with my work. Even though she was paid for it, she still did it. And I wrote a little inscription. Anyway, I haven't heard from her in years. She just emailed me today to tell me about how incredibly meaningful that moment was back then. She still holds on to it. She still looks at that thing that I wrote. It has fueled like multiple pivots in her life. Like, that is a fan for life. That is a person who will buy things over and over again. That is huge lifetime value. That's not the reason necessarily to do it, but that is true. Responding is the simple and quickest and easiest thing that you can do to build a fan for life. When I wrote that book, I included a paragraph about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson in it. A paragraph, because I'd interviewed him and he said something interesting and I put it in the book. I mailed him a copy of the book. 9 months later, I open Instagram and I've got a DM from The Rock, it's a voice memo. It's like 52 seconds long and it starts off, "Hey, Jason, this is DJ here." He goes by DJ. Like, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sending me this book. What is so nice of you to include me. I mean, it made my year. It was so nice. I will love anything that guy does. 52 seconds. 52 seconds. If The Rock has 52 seconds to make somebody's day and respond, so do you.
Yeah, I got to double down on this because two things you just talked about. One, you have to respond, but you have to do the hard thing, right? Our show's called Do the Hard Thing.
Yeah.
My wife listened to you and introduced you to me, or me to you, just in your information. And I just totally loved your show. And then I sent a note to you. You responded. You
Yeah.
said no.
Yeah.
Then I made a video just like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson did in a voice note. And I told you a story on really why I wanted you on the show and how important it was
Yeah.
because your information just sells to our audience in such a big way. I think it's because
And then I
people
said
wanted
yes.
to do the hard work. You said yes, right?
Yeah.
So it's about doing the hard thing because we all get solicitations all the time, and it's like going above and beyond. I'm not just talking about personalization of outbound. Walk us through why you think doing that voice note or me doing that video and doing that extra work, that hard work and outbound prospecting is so more important than it is just
I
the
you know,
information.
so I think that what you did, honestly, is you shocked the narrative. That's what you did. You shocked the narrative. The narrative that I have is this: someone reaches out to me, they ask for my time, I will get no benefit from that. Like that is just over and over again. That's what it is. Hey, can I ask your advice on something? Can I pitch you a thing? Can you be on my podcast that 3 people listen to? Like I just get that all day. And so, although I want to be gracious and I want to respond, I say no to almost everything. And that's because they came with a functionally a transaction, and I'm going to evaluate it as a transaction, and it fits inside of an existing narrative that I have. When you sent that follow-up video, you drove a human connection. And now, if I say no, frankly, I feel like a jerk. I just feel like a jerk, right? Like I know you and your wife had a conversation about me and you spent the time doing this and I'm still going to say no. What an asshole. Like that is basically what drove me to say yes. I don't know that anything's going to come out of me being on your podcast, but I just felt like I had to do it. And that is, look, that's not you don't like go around guilting people into doing things in the world, but like to create a human connection is also for someone to take a chance, is to go from, this is definitely not going to be useful to me, so I'm going to say no, to, I don't know, maybe I'll take a flyer, right? I mean, like everybody I think thinks of their time, I certainly do, as an investment strategy. So every day I wake up and I have the same amount of time. And I am going to invest that time the way that I invest my money, which is to say, I'm going to put most of it into something safe and predictable. That's just, I know is going to grow and it's going to grow slowly. And then I'm going to take a small portion of that time and I'm going to invest it into some wild card, right? I'm gonna throw it into some random crypto, or I'm gonna put it into some like high risk, something. And the same is true for time. I'll give 30 minutes to that, and we'll see if anything comes of it. I mean, I did that earlier today. I had 2 calls with people that I don't know if it's going to go anywhere, but it just felt like it was worth the risk. And so I'd say that what you've done is you have at least bought yourself into a different way of someone thinking about how they're spending their time. And then if you've got that, you got to really nail it. Right now, you've got their attention, and now you better bring it, which I would say so far, you guys are doing a great job in that. I am receiving over and over in everything that you say, every time I actually shut up so that you can talk, is that you've done your work, right? You're familiar with my work, you understand it, you have an idea of how I can be useful to your audience. That makes me feel good. Sometimes I go on podcasts and the person doesn't seem to have any idea who I am, and then I'm like, why am I here? So good job. But that's the reason. You got below the transaction to the human connection.
Awesome. Yeah, love to hear that. Thank you. And you've mentioned the idea of pressure testing concepts in low stake environments before bringing them to high stake, high pressure situations.
Mhm.
How important do you think that process, and what does it typically look like for you?
I mean, I think that anytime that you go into a high stakes situation, you better be bringing material that has survived low stakes situations. I mean, that's that, like, nobody, um, you don't create a product and then start pitching it to enterprise without making sure that it has passed all sorts of smaller tests. And the same is true in the business that I am primarily in, which is the ideas business. So what you're referring to is that I will test an idea in a small stakes way and then see if it works and then graduate it throughout my ecosystem. So I might take an idea and start by posting something on LinkedIn. And if it gets good engagement, then I might make a video out of it on Instagram. And then I might make a newsletter out of it. And then I might start kind of verbalizing it on podcasts. And then I might until maybe it becomes a segment of my keynote talk where then I'm standing in front of 1,000 people and I'm talking about it for 5 or 10 minutes. The way I structure my talk is it could be an hour long, but I have these different segments and different ideas. So the reason to do that is because you want to start in low stakes environments where experimentation is welcome and encouraged. And then you want to make sure that you are carefully stepping anything that you do up so that it can meet that moment. I do not want to test an idea in front of an audience of 1,000 people. At that point, I'm being paid good money to deliver excellent value, and those people are spending their time listening to me, and they better get the A material. But on LinkedIn, nobody really cares. If you don't like the post, just scroll down. Like the stakes are really low. So I think it's critical. I think everyone should do it. I learned that honestly from Gary Vee, who told me that he tests ideas. I mean, this was like when Twitter was Twitter. He said he tests ideas on Twitter, and if they work, then he graduates them up. And I thought that's genius.
Yeah, let's talk about Gary and your brand on LinkedIn because it's
Sure.
quite impressive, right?
Thanks.
You know, and we have so many entrepreneurs come to us and they're just scared, right? They're scared to be in front of camera. They're scared to do podcasts. We say, listen, content is king right now. You have to be a content creator, not just a programmer or a developer or whatever it
Yeah.
is their product is. Walk us through what your recommendation is to new entrepreneurs and how did they make a big splash in LinkedIn and where do you think LinkedIn's going right now in this content game?
Oh, God, I can monologue about this for an hour. So let me see if I can do it in like 120 seconds. Number one, you have to do it. You just have to. I'm sorry, you have to. And the reason for that is because, especially if you're a small business, you are part of the funnel. People will build a relationship with you, and that relationship will convert. And so if you are not activating yourself as a tool to capture attention and drive relationships, then you are leaving money on the table. People want to connect with you. So you're an asset. So what do you do? Well, in short, look, I think that the mistake that people make is that they think about personal brand and they get really caught up in the word personal. And they're like, oh, but I'm not a person. I'm not a public person. I don't want to be public. You don't have to be. Instead, emphasize the word brand. You are a brand. A brand is simple, repeatable, and scalable. That's it. So you got to make yourself simple, repeatable, and scalable, which is to say you have to understand who you are to other people, right? Like just shrink yourself down into a very simple version of yourself. What is the subject that you are going to talk about? And why is it relevant to the audience that you want to reach? What problem are you going to solve? If you if you have a company that makes children's food, then your audience is parents. And the thing that they're concerned about is raising healthy children. So that's what you're going to talk about. Just that. I don't care about anything else. And then after that, you got to make sure that you understand how you're showing up in that space. Who are you to them? Are you optimistic? Are you a concerned person? Are you an ingredient obsessed person? Whatever it is. And then you need to figure out how to produce regular content that is going to move the needle for them emotionally and also intellectually. Uh, it's not actually that complicated, but it takes a lot of practice and it takes some systems that you build up so that, for example, how you might have heard that and be like, well, but I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. Well, okay, how about this? The thing that you're going to write or the things that you're going to make videos about are things that come up in the conversations that you have that are most relevant to your audience. So, did a customer call you and ask you an interesting question and you gave them an answer and they found it very satisfying? Write that down right now. Like start a little notes thing on your iPhone called ideas and then just write that down. Were you giving advice to a fellow founder and they said, thank you, that is such a useful thing? Great, write that down. Like the greatest ideas are the ones that come up in real time in the real world. And so you have to capture them and then you can step back and reflect on them and then you can produce them as content. Like it's not actually that hard, but it's so important.
I love that. And I love your definition of entrepreneurship because it's not about building businesses only. It's
Yeah.
about making things happen, you like to say. And we have
Yeah.
a lot of brand new sellers who are craving for, everyone's craving for attention. Everyone's doing automation. AI is in the land of outbound sales. Is the phone dead? Is the email dead? All of these things, content creation. If you're a brand new seller, and whether joining your company, joining my company, joining a new company, what's the first a couple things you would advise them to do to get into the game and to stand out across their sales floor?
So first of all, nothing's dead. Like we like to say that something's dead because something new came along, but just because something new came along doesn't mean that the other thing is dead. People still ride bicycles even though the car is here. Right? Right? We still listen to audio even though TV exists. So nothing's dead. So it's really about, are you utilizing it in a really impactful way? So don't tell me that email is dead. Figure out the best way to use email. Don't tell me the phone is dead. Figure out the best way to use phone. Number two, I'd say the most important thing that you can do, and this goes back to the when context, I want solution so that benefit, is like you got to be talking to people, like talking to people and understanding what matters to them and what their concerns are and what motivates them. One of the most brilliant things that I've ever heard is so Donald Miller, who wrote Building a Story Brand. One of his frameworks is to say everybody has an external problem and an internal problem. And so they are going to seek out and talk about the external problem. The external problem is the thing fulfilled by the product that you're serving or service that you're selling. But the internal problem is the thing that's actually driving them. The example that he gives is, let's say that you have a house painting business. And so, who are you selling to? You're selling to homeowners. Well, the external problem that the homeowner might have is I need my house painted. But the internal problem that they have is that they're embarrassed or they're self-conscious that their house doesn't look as good as their neighbor's does. So in that case, then the marketing that works for them goes something like this. You might use a tagline that says, a house so good, your neighbors will be jealous. Again, I'm not making this up. This is Donald Miller's example, but like that's genius because what that's doing is it's selling the solution to the external problem, but it's appealing to the internal problem. And you need to understand who you are selling to well enough that you understand that they have an external problem and an internal problem. And the more in which you can show up and speak to both of them, but honestly, probably the internal problem first. I mean, Robert Herjavec, again, he told me that the way in which he does sales is that he walks into a room and the first thing he does is he asks people to talk about their problems. Like he's not talking about his solution first, he's talking about their problems. And the more in which you can do that, you're making a personal connection, but you're also making sure that you understand how to position yourself and your solution in a way that's going to be most relevant to them. And again, if you tell me that something is dead, then you're just not trying hard enough.
I love that advice. And for the listener who's in the middle of change right now, maybe a career pivot, company reorg, market shift, what's the first step you recommend they take to start this week for building tomorrow?
Well, Lexi, great tee up because it allows me to loop back to the one open thread in our conversation, which is when Gabe brought up the statement. So the challenge that we have is, or the mistake that we make is that we tend to tie our identities too closely to the output of our work or the roles that we occupy. So we say, as it's like, imagine if someone comes up to you at a party and asks what you do, your answer is like, oh, I do blanket blank, right? The problem is that something about that is going to change. And when it changes, it won't just feel like a shift in your work. It'll feel like a challenge to your identity. And that causes people to want to hold on to what came before. So what I encourage people to do is to come up with a personal mission statement and goes like this. It is a short sentence that starts with I, and then every word is carefully selected because it is not anchored to something that's easily changeable. So it's the difference between I am a magazine editor, which is a very changeable thing, right? All it takes is the magazine that currently employs me to fire me, and then that's the end. So I'm a magazine editor, very changeable. 7 words. Here are 7 words that are not changeable. I tell stories in my own voice. I tell stories. Stories, very important word. Every word carefully selected because it's not anchored to something that's easily changed. I tell stories like that is what I am doing with you right now. That is what I can do. Is fully within my control. I do it all the time in my own voice, is me setting the terms for how I want to operate at this stage of my career. Like this is not an external facing thing. I don't go around saying I tell stories in my own voice. Like that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but it is really useful to help me understand what my value is and to not be afraid of change. Because if I have one way of telling stories and it disappears, doesn't really matter because I wasn't about that one way of doing it. I'm about doing it. So I'll just find other ways. Now, if you want to actually communicate your value to others, then you do again what Donald Miller suggests, which is that you have to lead with the problem that you're solving. So it's the difference between again his example saying I'm a personal chef, which is like interesting, and maybe people ask questions about what it's like to be a personal chef, or it's you saying, you know how you get home after a long day and you don't have enough time to spend with your family because you immediately have to get dinner. And then by the time dinner's done and you're eating, like the kids have to go to bed. And so there's just no family time. I solve that problem for people by coming over and cooking them meals. Like that right there. Now you're talking about problems, you're talking about internal problems, and you're talking about external problems. People get it. And now they're interested in you. So you need to understand like who you are, in times of change, and you also need to understand what people need from you no matter what changes.
You are the man. Jason, thank you so much for spending the last 30 minutes with us. We really, really appreciate it. Who's the right person to reach out to, and how did they get a hold of you?
Who's the right person to reach out to? Well, I mean, it depends on what you're reaching out about. If you look, here's the best thing to do. I have a newsletter. It's called One Thing Better. Each week, one way to be more successful and satisfied and build a career or company you love. A lot of the things that we talked about today originated in that newsletter. And if you can get it by just going to onethingbetter.email. That's a web address. So like put that in a browser, onethingbetter.email. And if you get that email and you hit reply, it goes to my inbox. I will reply. If there's something that you want to do together, I'm all ears. I do a lot of consulting, speaking, and so on. And I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate it and can't wait to get this out to our audience. Everyone listening, keep doing the hard things, and we will see you on the next one.
Thanks.